This literally happened today. I advise you to skip this story if you're too sensible to gross stuff or if you're eating right now. So I'm a man. Yesterday was my birthday. Just turned 24, which means I've spent the weekend drinking my ass off. Friday on a club, Saturday on a bar, and yesterday at a friend's house. So you can imagine the mess I was this particular Monday morning. I have to take 2 buses to get to work, and the whole stopping all the time thing that they do can make me sick even in a non-hangover day. I considered going by car to avoid this, but then thought, fuck it, I've been here before. Could as well save the gas money and suck it up for the hour I spend riding the bus. Big mistake. I got on the bus and immediately felt sicker. But again, not my first time. And I decided to focus my attention on the other bus riders to get my mind off the bad feeling. Bigger mistake. At first, I didn't notice anything weird about this man, about 50 to 60 years old. But then, he suddenly got up and changed seats for no particular reason. And I could tell that he was probably homeless because his clothes were very dirty. Okay, no big deal. Got nothing against the homeless. Then, he started rubbing his fingers against the filthy bus floor and licking them. He smiled as he did this, and I noticed he had few to almost no teeth. This scene, combined with my hangover, made me extremely unwell. I thought it couldn't get worse, but he got up again and started picking whatever tiny pieces of dirt and garbage were on the bus floor and putting them in his mouth. He then got to the back of the bus and started maniacally laughing, which honestly creeped me the fuck out. I then decided to close my eyes to avoid seeing whatever he was going to put on his mouth next, but had to open my eyes occasionally so I didn't miss my stop. When I saw the spot before mine, I got up. So did he. As expected, his smell was putrid, and I had to fight my urge to vomit with him standing next to me. I avoided looking at him, and when the bus finally stopped and the doors opened, he went in the bus's garbage and started licking empty wrappers and plastic cups of coffee, among other stuff. I couldn't contain myself any longer, and as I stepped out of the bus, I puked on the stairs. I didn't go full Blastoise, so it was just one squirt. The rest, as you can imagine, I swallowed. I then looked at him, and he was smiling. As I stepped out of the bus, the man got down on the bus floor and started to enthusiastically lick my vomit. He was rubbing his hands against it, licking his fingers, and still smiling. I watched for what must have been the longest second of my life. My stop is located in front of a mall, in which I got in running as fast as I could and proceeded to spend the next half hour vomiting in the bathroom, only stopping once to call my boss and inform her I would be late. I know that man was probably mentally ill. I do feel sorry for him and expect that somebody got him the help he needs after seeing what he did today. But I don't want to ever see anybody even resembling him again in my life. It's like he appeared precisely on that day in which I was less able to deal with that kind of stuff, and the image of him licking my vomit off of a bus floor is forever stuck in my mind. I am female. When I was 10 years old, my family relocated from Delaware to South Carolina for my dad's job. We lived near all our family and had never moved before. One of Dad's selling points about the move was that people in the South are so friendly. I had just finished 5th grade and would be starting 6th in South Carolina. I rode the bus to and from school in Delaware, and so there wasn't a lot of anxiety about riding the bus after we moved. 6th grade started, and I was excited about my new school and loved my teacher. Dad was right. People in the South are polite and friendly. Well, most of them are. Anyway, one day in the fall, I got off the bus at my stop after school, and a man in a dark green VW Beetle that was behind the bus pulled off the main road and called out to me as I was walking toward my house. I turned around and probably even smiled at him. I had no real stranger danger fears at the time. I walked up to the driver's side of his car to see what he wanted. I figured he wanted to ask for directions or something, and I planned to tell him I just moved here and didn't know. But oh boy, he didn't need directions. He was after something entirely different. He smiled at me and said something I didn't catch, comprehend, or understand. So I said, "What?" or "Excuse me?" to get him to repeat it. I got a little closer so I could hear him better, and he said, "Want to fuck?" So at the time, I didn't know what that meant, except that maybe I kind of did, and knew that was a bad word, and I didn't want to, whatever fuck was. I turned and ran to my neighbor's house and didn't look back. I was crying, and they called my mom, and my parents called the police about it. A couple of days later, the police department had a sketch artist come meet my parents and I at the station to work with me. I did the best I could, but honestly, I wasn't studying the man's features or even trying to remember his face at the time of the incident, so I don't know how accurate it was. My parents and I thought that was the end of it. Nobody really thought they would find him. The cops were saying things like, if they could find him, he could go to jail for a while for his obscene question to me. My mom was nervous that if it came to that, I would have to go to court to testify, and she didn't feel good about putting me through that. She worried that even as an undeveloped 10-year-old child, the defense would attempt to shame me in some way or say I was asking for it. About a week later, I was again getting off the bus, and I hear a car horn beep. I look to see, and it was the same guy, same VW Beetle, smiling and waving at me. I was stunned. I blankly waved back for some reason, but at the same time memorized his tag number. I repeated it to myself over and over as I ran to my house to write it down and call Mom. Cops were notified, and the guy was identified. He lived about 20 minutes away in another town. His local cops knew and were friendly with his family, the good old boy system, so he didn't go to jail. But apparently, they told him to stay away from me. I never saw him again, and I hope I never do. I wonder how many times he might have followed the bus and watched me that I never knew about. Dear pedo pervert predator, let's never meet again.
Okay, to preface this, here's a little backstory. At the time of this incident, I was 17 years old and a senior in high school. I rode the school bus sometimes when my friends didn't drive me home. That was what happened that day. So, here it is. I got off the school bus at my street, and the stop was at an intersection between my street and the highway. My street isn't a big street. It only has about 7 houses. And every person on my street is a business owner. I know all my neighbors. Well, I got off my bus, and while I'm walking towards my street, a white van pulls up and stops in front of the bus. The van had tinted windows and those sometimes illegal tints on the front window as well. Well, I walked onto my street and the bus drove away. And once the bus went away, the van turned onto my street. It drove slow and kept up with me. I immediately was just like, oh, absolutely not, because human trafficking is not a big thing in my state. I saw the car stop right next to me, and that's when I ran. I ran across one of my neighbor's lawns as I heard the man in the van open his door. I went on my phone and turned on Noonlight, an app where, if I let go of the button on the screen, it immediately sends police to my location. I ran as fast as I could and hid for 10 minutes waiting for the van to drive away. Once the van left, I went to my house, told my parents, and we called the police. Police came, interviewed me, and told me there'd been sightings of that car all around town, and there were even a few disappearances linked to it. It's been about a year, and nothing has happened. And I'm beyond happy about that. So Van Predator, let's not meet. This happened when I was in my early 20s. I was working in a retail store in a mall, but there weren't enough hours, so I asked if there was anything else I could do, and my boss told me that the location at the other mall needed more help, so I could go there on my weekend. I decided to take the bus route that was a bit longer, but that I didn't have to make any transfers. So I got up early and caught the earliest one I could. The bus ride was fairly normal. I got to see parts of my city I hadn't seen before. I did notice that the bus eventually went into a more dingy neighborhood. There was more trash everywhere, abandoned buildings, houses and cars, etc. I noticed it, but I felt like I was safely on the bus, and my destination was in a nice neighborhood. At some point, an elderly lady got on the bus, and I noticed that no one was getting up to offer her a seat. So I gave her mine and went to go hold the pole next to the side door of the bus and continued on my way. While riding, I remember looking at a guy next to me and asking if he knew about how much longer it would take to get to my stop. But before he answered, someone hit the buzzer to get off. The doors next to me opened, and I felt hands on my free arm grabbing me and pulling me. I, on reflex, immediately clenched up, because I generally don't like any physical contact with strangers outside of a greeting handshake. And I really think that reflex saved my life, because it took my brain a few seconds to register that someone was trying to pull me off the bus. A tall man in a white tank top, blue jeans, and white tennis shoes had come out of the back of the bus, grabbed my arm, and tried to drag me off the bus. He had pulled me down to the second step before I even understood what was going on, and I was just barely still hanging onto the pole. The arm he was grabbing had my purse on it, and I actually tried to shake my purse down to him so he'd let go, but he had no interest in my purse. I had just about started calling for help when I felt someone grab my waist and pull me back up towards the bus. The man trying to pull me down must have realized that he couldn't get me without this dragging out longer than he expected, so he finally gave up and ran off. And that was it. The guy ran off, the door shut, and I vaguely remember hearing the man who saved me say something along the lines of, "You would die in that neighborhood." And I had apparently gone into some kind of shock, because I only remember saying, "Oh," I don't even remember thanking him. I didn't say anything to the driver. I didn't contact the police like I should have. I don't even remember my shift at that other location. I don't remember the ride home. It was like I was numb. It was when I was at home, had completely showered and gotten ready for bed in my nightgown, that I sat at the edge of my bed and thought, did I almost get kidnapped? I almost got kidnapped. I have a lot of regrets about this. I regret not contacting the police in case that guy goes after another woman. At least women would be aware that he was out there. And I regret not thanking and keeping in contact with that nice person who saved me. I actually posted an article in my local CL in hopes of him somehow hearing it and knowing how grateful I am. Well, anyway, to that guy that tried to take me off the bus, let's not meet, and I hope you get caught.